Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This video is kind of geared towards some of the new RCers that are coming into the armor groups. Come here. And I don't have any of my armors with me, but I do have this with me, which is very similar. Very similar in design to some of the bigger armors. It's actually very similar to the Arma Typhon. Very similar. But anyway, I want to talk to the new RCers a little bit. A lot of you guys, that you be coming into the groups, you've got the brush system, the entry-level chassis. And there is nothing wrong with that. That's a good place to start. Now, reliability of a brush system versus a brushless. Many of you have already found out you're busting fins off of the brush motors. The reliability is not quite as good as a brushless. And here's why. Okay, this is a brushless motor. As you notice, there are absolutely no openings into the interior of the motor, except where the shaft exits, and that's still sealed by a bearing. So it's very hard to get something in there to break parts of the motor. You have to have seriously messed up to get something inside of the motor that's not supposed to be there. That doesn't mean to say that they still don't need to be cleaned and lubed, but the cleaning and lubing of a brushless motor is different. You're basically just taking the end caps off and getting access to the bearings, cleaning the bearings and lubing the bearings, and that's all you're doing. Okay, whereas a brush motor, what a lot of people do is they will hook the motor up to an ESC out of the chassis and set it down in distilled water and run it in the distilled water, which cleans out the motor. And then, of course, you still have to lube the bearings and everything like that to keep it from locking up and rusting. Now, as some of y'all have noticed in my responses to your posts, my recommendation is once you get used to running your RC brushed, to avoid the necessary upgrades to going to seriously higher power, if you're going to upgrade to brushless, upgrade to an equivalent brushless system to the brushed. Okay, that would be something similar, for like the 110 scale Sentons and stuff like that. A 1400 series Castle motor, a Sidewinder 4, or a Mamba X, and keeping it on 2S to 3S. And the reason for that is you really won't have to mess with anything beyond the motor or ESC and setting your gear mesh. Okay, because it's already designed to handle that power level, so you won't really have to mess with it. It's when you start putting serious power into an RC that's not designed for it that you really have to look at what's going to get tore up. Your diffs, your drive shafts, your out drives, your tires, your wheels, those things, your gears. But if you're not really changing the power level, if you're staying 2S from a 2S brushless and you're just going to run 2S or a 2S brush to a 2S brushless power level, you're not going to have to mess with it. Even going 2S to 3S, you're not going to have to mess with it. Now, if you're jumping from brush to a 4S, 5S, or a 4S, 6S setup, you're pretty much going to have to change everything mechanically. Okay. The other thing I want to talk to you all about is maintenance. Okay, new RCers, they really don't know what they have to do to these things to keep them running. That's routine. Besides, if you break something, of course you got to fix what's broke. but there is a maintenance routine you should follow. Okay, these things have bearings, they have pivot points, they have ball ends with inserts. All this stuff wears over time. Okay, like you can see, this one has about 25 packs through it. You can see there's some wobble starting in the suspension arms, which that's actually pretty severe. So yeah, I need to do some maintenance, tighten some things up. It needs pillow ball adjustments because there's some wiggle there. Okay, that's just from wear. Okay, that's normal wear and tear. The other thing, bearing, this thing is pretty dirty, as you can see. It needs to be taken down, the electronics removed, the hubs pulled apart, all the exposed bearings pulled out, cleaned, lubed, reinstalled, and reassembled. The diffs, it's getting about time for diff services. Pull the diffs, change the fluids. Okay. Those are, I do those every 3 months. I do the rest once a month, and it is about time for this one to get done. You can see it's got grass and shit in it. You want to clean all that stuff out. These motors and ESCs produce heat. You got loose, dry grass and stuff in there. It's a good way to start a fire. But yeah, your motor bearings, you can buy what's called electric motor bearing lube. Okay, it comes in a little bottle. You can get it on Amazon. It has about a 3-inch needle nozzle on it to where you can get into those tight little spaces. You pull your end caps off by pulling those screws out. The bearings literally sit right underneath in the center. A drop on each one. Put the end caps back on, put the screws back in. That's all you got to do. On your electric fans, your cooling fans, like on your ESC, pull these screws, take the cover off, flip the fan over so that way that you're looking at the motor side, and there is a small opening that goes around the fan blades between the fan blades themselves and the motor. Put another drop of that electric motor bearing lube in there for your fans. Okay, all these little things have little bearings or bushings in them, and if they don't have lubrication, they wear out quickly. All right, now on my exposed bearings, like in my hubs and on the exposed areas of the diffs, like this one, the center diff is pretty much all exposed. There's a bearing here and a here. Dirt and water and crap can get in there, cause excess wear on the bearings. Pull those, clean them really good with something like WD-40, something like that. Get the grime and the crap out of them. And again, that electric motor bearing lube is absolutely freaking awesome. The other thing I use, is Lucas Oil gun lube. Gun oil. Okay, it is a fully synthetic oil. It's fairly thick, so it doesn't want to run out like the electric motor bearing lube will if used in big amounts. It kind of has a tendency to stay in the bearing, and I will put the bearings in a cup with a layer of that, let them sit for a little while, then put them back in after wiping them dry. Okay, that gets the oil down in all the little crevices of the bearings and in all the little tiny spots, so that way they are not dry anywhere. And then when you wipe the outside, that's all you need to do. Okay, they're a sealed bearing. You pop the little seals off, and once they're removable, and then once you go to put them back in, you put the seals back on. That holds the lube in the bearing. Okay, I do that to all my exposed bearings. Okay, I do it to the bearings on the diffs when I do the diffs. The other thing you want to do about every 3-6 months, depends on how much you use it, you want to change your shock oil. Just like any other oil, it gets dirty. Change it out. Put fresh in. Your shocks will stay consistent. Just like a regular car, they take a little TLC, and as long as you do the TLC, they'll stay reliable as far as mechanically. Now, it doesn't prevent things from breaking if you crash into stuff, obviously, but they do stay reliable. The other thing I do routinely, basically after each day of running, is I will come and I will look for loose screws. I do routinely do that while I'm running as well, hopefully to catch them if they are coming loose before they fall out and disappear. The other thing I do after each pack is I check my wheel nuts, make sure they stay tight. This has had the wheel nuts replaced because the stock ones were smooth. These have knurling on the back. They have a tendency to stay tighter, longer, but they can still work loose. Okay. What that prevents, obviously, is the hexes in your wheels, in the rims. Here's an old tire. It stops the hexes in the rims from stripping out. Okay. So you end up basically saving yourself having to buy new tires, especially if they're glue mounted like these are. Okay, and you can see this needs new front tires too, so it will get those as well during its maintenance cycle, because they're about done. There's a little bit more life in them, but not much. And for this, I actually like the stock tires. There has been no changes to this other than the wheel nuts and the receiver. It's bone stock gearing, bone stock motor, bone stock ESC. Everything you see is what the factory put in. Okay, it has had no changes, no updates, no upgrades. And the reason why I can do that is because I haven't changed these and I haven't changed the gearing. I don't have to touch it. It's absolutely reliable. It is an absolute beast. I love this thing. But yeah, do your routine maintenance. Okay, do your checks. Just like if you're dealing with a classic car or an expensive car or your regular car, there are things you want to check, things you always want to look at. It's a little bit different with an RC, but there's similarities. Your oils, you want to change those. You want to lube your bearings. You want to check for bent, busted, or broken parts, especially during your maintenance when you have it disassembled. That's when you really want to check for stuff, because there's things that could be bent that you never know. You could bend a suspension pin, but you'd never know it until you pull it out and say, oh crap, that's bent. Okay, there's certain spares you want to keep on hand. All right, screws of the various sizes. Have a screw. You can buy a screw kit for them to where it has all the screws. Your servo, there's a motor in there with bearings and gears. They need to be routinely maintained. Take the excess covers off the servo. There's a little opening in the circuit board. You drop a little bit of the electric motor bearing lube down there, dab a silicone grease on the gears, put it back together. Okay, that's something that I do with all my RC planes routinely every winter. All the servos come out, they get tested, they get lubed, they get greased, they get reassembled, tested again, and then put back in the planes. Okay, one plane at a time. Increases the life of your servos a lot. These servos actually do generate a lot of heat, especially if you're running hard, constantly turning, flipping the wheels from one direction to the other. You're building heat in that servo. Okay, and heat kills electronics. Heat kills electricals. So maintain them, and it reduces the wear and tear on them. They stay running cooler. They can handle the heat better. When you take a servo out and you flip it over, you'll notice that there's 4 screws on the bottom. Those are the 4 screws you take out. That bottom cover comes off, so does the top cover right here. Your gears are under here. Your electric circuit board is typically on the other end with the little opening. Looks like a little drill hole, and that's where you stick the nozzle and just put one single drop down through that hole and you're good. It's dielectric oil, so it will not interfere with the electronics whatsoever. The gear side is away from the electronics. The grease, if you do it to where you're just covering the teeth, putting a layer on the teeth, you don't have to get crazy with it. Again, dielectric grease, silicone based, just a little bit, that's all it takes. Let's see, pretty simple. Every time you run, before you run that first pack, pull your gear cover, check your gear mesh. Make it a routine, make it a habit. Okay? Again, it's going to save you aggravation if you always know your gear mesh is correct. Then those gears are going to last a long time. And again, just like any other gear, if you have all metal gears like this one does, a little dab of grease on the teeth, rotate them so that the grease gets distributed, and there you go. Put your gear cover back on, go in like when you do your other routine maintenance, clean the old grease off, replace it. They'll run quieter, you'll reduce the wear on the gears, they'll last longer. Last thing, let's see, batteries. Let's talk about batteries. A lot of you guys that are new to RC, you're new to LiPo batteries. Okay? These things pack enough power. This one right here packs enough power to be the equivalent of a small fire in your fireplace. Okay? But they burn 4 times as hot. They will burn hot enough to melt aluminum. Okay? So the one thing you always want to do, especially after you've been running, before you hook them up to a charger, is one, let them cool off, because they do warm up. Alright, the other thing you want to look for is condition. Alright, these batteries sit close to moving parts. There's a potential of gears eating through the outside shrink wrap. There's a potential of it penetrating the cells. Okay, you crash, batteries come flying out, you want to check them. Now there's some like this, has a little bit of damage to the label. That's just the label. Alright, anything that comes through that black outer wrapping, you want to look at. Okay, now if the cells underneath are not damaged, you can literally rewrap the battery with shrink and it's fine. If the battery is really puffed, don't trust it. Okay, if it's puffed to the point that it can't expand anymore, it's going to explode just from the pressure. It may not burn, but it's going to pop. Alright, now there are things that you can do if a battery starts to puff. You can take very carefully, and staying away from the cells, take a pin like a sewing needle and pierce that outer opening, give it a vent, and vent some of that pressure off, which will allow the battery to last a little bit longer, but you need to still replace it. The other thing you're going to run across when it comes to batteries is you're going to hear people talking about battery break-in. Okay, you get a brand new set of batteries, you take them out of the box, you hook it up to the charger, and you notice that there's that the cells are all different voltages. That's because they're brand new cells. Okay, and so what you do, they're individually tested and charged before being assembled into a full battery. So what you have to do a battery break-in procedure. Get all the cells working at the same rates. Alright? And how you do that, obviously, is with your charger. And the easiest way is with an RC. Okay? You take brand new batteries out, you hook them up, you charge them to full. Okay? Now what I do, instead of using the discharge mode on the charger, is I will put them in a chassis, weight off of the wheels or the tires off, and I will run it at half throttle until it hits low voltage cutoff. Okay, it may take a minute depending on the size of the battery. Take them back out, recharge back to full. Do that 3 times. Then on your last time, if you're not going to run the batteries that day, after you go to LVC for the 3rd time, charge to storage. Okay? Anything else other than storage charge, balance charge. This makes sure it takes longer, yes, but for the health and the life of the battery, always balance charge. If you want to be replacing batteries every 6 months, quick charge them. Always quick charge, and you will kill a battery within 6 months. If you constantly balance charge, it doesn't matter the battery brand. If they are decent batteries, they'll last years. I have lipos that I use in my RC planes that are 3-4 years old. They are not puffed. They balance perfectly. Their resistance is perfect. They are just fine. I have some that are older than that I now only use for bench work, like running in servos, stuff like that, because they're just so old. Even though they still balance charge, they still check out fine, they are literally just so old that I don't really want to rely on them in a $15,000 RC plane. Okay? It's not that I couldn't, probably. It's just, there's a point where you just don't want to risk it. No matter how good the battery says it is, and no matter how good the charger says it is, and no matter how well it tests out, there's just a certain point that's a cutoff. It's like, yeah, I'm not going to fly with that one, but I'll use it on the bench. Now, these are some of the cheapest RC batteries you can get. Okay, there's these. All right, I think I paid $96 for the pair to have a match set to go in this 7,000 mAh. But they're not Onyxes, but for a basher, they're just fine. And the reason why they're just fine, if something does happen to these batteries or one of them, how much am I out? I'm not out $150 for a new Onyx basher battery. I'm out $45-50. Now, as these run in pairs in this, if something happens to one of them, I will replace the pair, but I will keep the good battery for like a 3 SRC. All right, I don't throw both of them away. That's crazy. But I will buy a mat when I have an RC that runs 2 3S or 2 4S or 2 whatever. I always keep them match sets. Always. Because this ESC is going to pull from those batteries at a certain rate at the same time, depending on the battery's internal resistance. So if I run them in match sets, they'll always match up well and power well to that RC. Now, do you have to do that? No, that's just something I do. Okay, you could have 4 3S batteries all the same size, all the same brand. You not even have to be the same brand, as long as they're the same MAH, the same cell count, and the same voltage. As long as they are the same spec wise, you can run them. You can run a 4S and a 2S. I wouldn't recommend it, but you can, as long as they're the same milliamp hours. The other thing, guys, the last thing, if you're new to RC, there is one skill that you can pick up for yourself that will save you money, time, and aggravation. Okay? Soldering. Alright? Most aftermarket ESCs, like Castle, do not come with a plug on them, on the battery leads. Okay? So you have to solder it on. You have to put one on it. You might buy batteries or have batteries and realize that the plugs don't work. So instead of using adapter, cut the other plug off, solder on the plug that you need. Wire fixes, you rub through a motor wire, cut it, solder it back together, shrink wrap, good as new. All right, same thing with servo wires, same thing with any other wire. It could be the cat pack wires. If you can solder and you've got enough length, you can fix it instead of having to replace the whole thing. Okay, it's a handy skill to have. And if you don't know how to do it, get you a cheap soldering iron, some scrap wire that's cheap. Go on YouTube, watch some videos, try it, keep doing it until you're decent at it, and then there you go. You now have unlocked the full capabilities of your RCs. All right, you can literally buy one kind of plug all the time and just swap plugs where you need to. Plugs are cheap. $5, $10 for 5 of a certain type. The really high-end ones, $25 for 5 of them of 5 pairs of a certain type. Like my speedrun cars, all run QS8s. $30 on Amazon. I get 5 sets, male and female. Okay, so, and it doesn't have to be pretty as long as there's no exposed metal. All right, so don't be afraid to learn a new skill. Just save yourself some time, aggravation, and money. Okay, and soldering is not that difficult. Again, I am not the greatest solderer, but what I do solder is not a cold solder, it's a good joint, and they work. There are guys out there that can solder absolutely pretty. Prettiness doesn't win the damn race. As long as it works, wins. That's pretty much it, I think, as far as just a quick overall new RC tip session. Okay, for a new RCer. I fly RC too. I've been flying RC since I was 8 years old. Driving RC is a much more newer departure because it's very hard to fit a 1/4 scale or 1/5 scale RC plane in a tractor trailer. So I take these on the road with me. And that's what I do on the road. I fly when I'm home. But yeah, you can literally take these things apart, clean them up, and they'll look like brand new just coming out of the box. So don't be afraid to get them dirty. Just do the maintenance on them, and they will last for years. And with their original electronics. I gotta, I love my Armas, but I gotta give hands off to Corrali for this thing. They really did a really good RC in the Asuka XLR. The Kagami is supposed to be as good, if not better, than this. So if you're looking for an alternate brand to Arma to kind of spread out a little bit, definitely check these out because they are very good RCs. Very well spec'd and pretty darn decent on the durability. I've busted a shock stand off, which is a common problem with Corralis because they kind of hang out there, and they're actually kind of small. I would have expected bigger threads, but the thing is I busted it against my ankle. It wasn't just out running. It took me about 4 days to walk normal again, and it took about a week and a half for the bruising to go away because it hit me at full throttle. I dumb thumbed. Yeah, it hurt. So reliability is a big thing for me. It's the reason why the only Traxxas I own is a Fortec, and it's technically not even a Traxxas anymore. The last of the Traxxas parts will be disappearing very soon. Watch for a video on that, because it's going to be freaking epic. I think that's it. I can't think of anything else. The only other thing I can say, guys, is this is your hobby. Okay? Just like it's my hobby. How we enjoy our hobby is up to the individual. Okay? There is no right or wrong. It's just whether it's been tried or not tried. You want to do something crazy that nobody else has done, do it. Okay? It's your money, it's your hobby. Alright? And with that said, I'll tell a story. And I will try to make it quick, because this is already a 30-minute video. But I'm going to tell you a story. I have a RC plane that I still have, that I still fly. It is a P-51. And when I built that plane, my goal was to have it fly with a scale-looking propeller. And everyone told me, because of the size of plane that it was, that was not possible. That there was just no way to do it. I should just stick with a 2-blade prop at the recommended length and be happy. That's not the answer. Okay? I found a way. I found people who were willing to help me get there. Alright? I took a motor that everyone said, oh, there's no way, and I turned it into a frickin' powerhouse that no other motor its size can match. So don't ever let anyone tell you it can't be done. It's RC. All you have to do is figure out the how. There are people that have told guys that have built vertical takeoff RC planes that it couldn't be done. They've done it. They told them that it wasn't possible to fly beyond visual range. Guess what? FPV came about. So now it's been done. All it took was somebody thinking outside of the box, and then figuring out how to do it technologically. That's it. There is no limit to this hobby. The only limits that are there is how far you want to push. Okay? And hoping that the technology is there to let you push that far. So the comments of something is stupid or I wouldn't do that, no. The only thing that I would say is that if there is a specific section of RC that you want to get into, and I will say crawling, okay, like RC rock crawling, pick a chassis that's designed to do that, okay, because obviously if you're going to push the limits of RC rock crawling or drifting or speed run, you kind of need a chassis that's already designed to do it to help you get where you want to be. Like the P-51. I wanted a scale-looking warbird, so I had to start with a warbird. Now I've got a scale-looking warbird. Okay? RC drift. Start with a drift chassis. Alright? You want a 6S drift chassis? Build a 6S drift chassis. But start with a drift chassis. Because... or something that's designed to be drifted, like an infraction. They're kind of designed for it. They got the handbrake and everything there. Alright? Don't start off with a Fortec and expect it to keep up with rear-wheel drive RC drift chassis. It can't do it. No matter what modifications you do, That's not going to be the same. The rear-wheel drive cars are going to outdrift a Fortec every time. So as far as trying to be competitive with it or to try to keep up, it's slowly going to fall behind because it's not designed to do it. Pick a chassis for what it's designed for. Don't pick a chassis because of looks or because of money. There are cheaper RC drift chassis out there than buying a 2.0 VXL Fortec that ultimately would be cheaper built than a VXL Fortec modified to try to drift. Okay? So save yourself the headache. Now, push the limits of that chassis all you want to. But always start with something that's designed for what you want to do to make it easier to push those limits. Do you understand what I'm saying? I could twin motor this and still have a twin motor basher. It'll be fast as hell, but in the end, it's still going to be an off-road buggy because that's what it's designed to be. I could lower it, put foams on it, and try to turn it into a speed run car, but it would never be as good as a Limitless V2 or a Hobio VTE2. Okay? I could throw an 8S system in here. It still wouldn't keep up with my Limitless. It couldn't do it. It's not designed for it. So that's the thing, guys, is that's the one the biggest piece of advice I'll give you is buy a chassis that's designed to do what you want it to do. Don't try to band-aid something into doing something it's not designed to do. In the end, you'll not be as happy with it as you would be with something that was designed to do that. This would not make a good rock crawler. But obviously, if I wanted to rock crawling, I would need to go buy an RC rock crawler to start with and then modify to make it better. So that's my point. Could this do some rock crawling? Oh yeah, sure. Would I want to do that? No, not really, because to me rock crawling is boring as hell. It's too slow. Other guys enjoy it. That's their cup of tea. It's just not mine. Doesn't mean that they're wrong or that they're crazy. It's just different tastes. All right. So don't ever let anybody tell you're stupid because you have an idea that you want to try that you have never seen anyone try before. All right. There's nothing wrong with trying. All right. There's nothing wrong with failing. The fact of the matter is that you tried and that you learned something. That's the journey. Anyway, guys, have a good one. I'm out of here. This video is now 38 minutes long. So y'all have a good one. Enjoy your hobby. To the new RCers, welcome to the hobby. And I hope I gave you some good information. Keep an eye on the channel, obviously, because I do post videos every now and then. I don't do a lot of videos. I'm not after YouTube fame or monetization or anything like that, so I don't do a whole lot of content. I mainly use the channel for information where I see a need, and new RCers are always a need for information. You always want as much information as you can get when you're new, and that's part of the hobby, is being able to pass on information to help the new guys coming into the hobby. That's a big part of it. If you guys are interested in flying RC, give me a holler as well, because I can help you out there. Again, there's not a whole lot of content about my planes on the channel. That's kind of a whole separate deal for the most part. And I kind of think if I start mixing RC surface and RC air together on the same channel, things would start getting confusing for some people. So I don't do that. Anyway, until next time, have a good one.